Hi, today I'm going to walk you through a strategy that you can use to create better shadows for your digital art and illustrations, essentially allowing you to go from this to this. We're going to talk about color and how you can use it to create more aesthetically pleasing and harmonious illustrations. We're going to look at the technique that I recommend and use myself to create illustrations. And lastly, as a little bonus, we're going to touch on highlights, because when it comes to shadows and highlights, you can't have one without the other. So just as a side note, this episode is created because Revelia J commented on a previous video of mine to ask how I choose colors and make them harmonize. So hopefully this tutorial answers your question. Okay, let's dive in. So when it comes to color, it's hard to define what makes a good color palette. I used to have a very strict color palette for myself, and more recently I've become more relaxed with my color choices. I think the bottom line is that you need to find a color palette that goes with the vibe and brand of your illustrations, and try to make sure that your colors feel like they are part of the same family. So for example, these colors feel like they belong together and embody the same sort of vibe. And same goes for this color palette. But if I were to switch the blues, for example, you'll see that that's not really working anymore. Okay, so hopefully that helps. I just wanted to touch on color selection for a quick second, even though that's not the focus of today's tutorial. So what I really want to dial deep down on is the use of color in your shadows. A lot of the time when drawing shadows, a lot of people will take their base color and select a darker shade of that color to use as their shadow. Or sometimes they might even use black to define the darkest darks of their shadows. And that is completely fine. If it works for you, that's great. But I have a life-changing tip for you. Instead of using these neutral shades for your shadows, try applying color instead. And that can be really whatever you want it to be. Just make sure it's darker than your base. So for me, I usually use this burgundy color. I've also used this forest green in the past, but the possibilities are endless. So just to show you how that I would actually approach that, here's the base color of my illustration, and using my burgundy color, I'm going in and lightly applying my shading at a low opacity, gradually building that color up as I go. The reason why I don't go in at full opacity at the very beginning is because you won't get that gradual soft build-up. It'll just feel very harsh and abrupt. Now, I have to mention, everything that you're learning today isn't specific to any program or software. You could take these principles and apply them to whatever you use, even if you're using pencil and paper, paint, watercolor, Procreate, whatever it is. But I know a lot of people will be curious, so I'm going to briefly touch on my process. When creating these illustrations, I personally create all my base layers in Adobe Illustrator. I save that file as a Photoshop document and then open it up in Photoshop and add the shading and details there. I have a tutorial that goes through this process in much more depth, and I will link it up here if you're interested in learning more. Additionally, the brush that I use in Photoshop is a custom brush. I have it up for sale. It's compatible with Photoshop and Procreate. But if you want to save your coins, I also have a tutorial that goes through the process of creating your very own custom brush, which I will also link at the top of the screen right now. Okay, so back to it. So far, we know that we can apply colorful shadows to our base for more interesting illustrations. But here is where it gets interesting. Let's say, for example, you want to draw a very dark object, or maybe even someone with a very dark skin tone. Looking at these, you might realize that having the shadow be lighter than the base color isn't going to work. This is why I suggest that in these cases, you actually switch the base and the shadow around, so that your chosen unrealistic color becomes the base and your base becomes the shadow. Okay, I know that probably sounds confusing, but here is what I mean. Take that base color, so in my case, that's the burgundy color, and using the skin tone, start to gradually build in those shadows with whatever medium you're using, until you have something that looks like this. And this is looking pretty good. We have our shadows and base in there, but remember what I said at the beginning. Shadows and highlights do go hand in hand. So here is what our piece looks like with just the shadow, and here is what it looks like with the addition of the highlight. And the difference is night and day. Highlights are going to give your work so much more body and depth and dimension. And the way that you apply highlights is also quite simple. You need to figure out which parts of your object or character naturally catch the light. And for a human face, that's usually going to be the nose, the forehead, the cheekbones, the brow bones, the chin, as well as a little on the eyelids and the lips. And using a light color, I usually do a very light version of that base color that I'm using. So essentially, the closer that you get to white, the more dramatic your highlights are going to be. So using that color and using your brush, lightly going in and adding those highlights. It's also super helpful to use an eraser, whether that's digital or physical, to help refine and carve out that highlight if needed. This is especially great if you're working on a very skinny highlight, so like let's say on the nose, for example. So that is how you're going to create the best shadows for your digital art. I really hope this was helpful to you, and please comment if you have any questions or requests for specific tutorials. And I have a favor to ask you. Please subscribe. It's a win-win. Subscribing gives me the motivation to keep creating content, and you get to keep up to date with the very best tutorials, helping you grow and level up in your illustration practice and career. Either way, thank you for listening to the end. I always assume that no one actually listens to the end, so if you're still here, you're a real one and you have a special place in my heart. All right, until next time, bye for now.